from my experience and from what we've seen across the few implementations of it, it's actually had the opposite effect. It actually has improved conversion rate. It's actually improved engagement in checkout. So when we look at sort of exit rates and engagement rates on certain fields within the checkout flow, they're actually all positive.
You're listening to Inside Commerce, a weekly e-com strategy, technology and CX focused podcast hosted by experienced digital consultants and re-platform specialist James Gurd and Paul Rogers. Get insights into e-com strategy of leading brands, hear from industry thought leaders and leading tech vendors with practical advice to help you improve your online CX. This episode is sponsored by WorldPay, and we've got an interesting, slightly different topic today. So I'm talking about mass market versus targeted and how about the value of building niche capabilities into your e-com roadmap. And got a well-known guest coming back who joined us very recently, actually, on a vendor roundup episode before Christmas. So warm welcome back in the new year to Brad, who's the strategy director at Remarkable Commerce.
Hey James, how's it going?
I'm all right. I know that you had a nasty illness in December, so I'm glad that you're better. How's January looking for you? 2 days in, how's it feeling?
It's good. Yeah. We didn't have too many issues over the Christmas break, which was good. So we come back to lots of exciting projects on the horizon. We've got some really interesting prospects and some RFPs that we're doing at the moment. So lots of exciting stuff past 2 days. Should be a good week, and we'll see how January plays out.
Yeah. Before you give it a flavour for the people who don't know you, who Remarkable Commerce is and what you do for them, I just want to tee up the episode to give people a flavour of what's coming. So Brad and I are chatting about this pre-Christmas, is that often you find in projects that people focus on what's available now, like what are the core native features, what are the core capabilities, and shy away from building custom features, because with custom features, it creates potentially additional costs that might not have been previously expected. It adds risks when you're building custom development. But however, there are often really tangible business cases for going down a custom route, and it adds value to the business. And a business case can be created and you can get the buy-in for it, and launching or continuing in your roadmap without building those capabilities can be detrimental to your overall success, either to your customers, to your revenue opportunity. So Brad has got a lot of experience Remarkable on their client base at building out custom features to extend the core capabilities of the platform. We thought it'd be really interesting to go into some of those use cases. So we're going to talk about things like adding Shopify Pay component to non-Shopify storefronts, implementing embedded insurance, and then building custom middleware. So some areas where people would probably not expect these to be core capabilities in projects. So before we do that, that's your teaser. But Brad, for those who haven't come across Remarkable and yourself before, do you want to give people the elevator pitch on what you guys do?
Yeah, happily. So Remarkable are a development partner for many mid-market brands across the UK. There's two elements of the business essentially at Remarkable. So for the last 27 years, we've been building our own technologies. So first and foremost, we're a technology provider. So we have our own technologies, fully custom. Those things include an e-com platform, warehouse management system, and also a massive suite of middleware solutions. So that's the first part of the business. It's offering those technologies as solutions. And then the second part of the business is more of a traditional agency. So we have 93 staff all here in Nottingham, and we offer development engineering services, UX, technical SEO, QA, all the kind of traditional agency services. And we offer that technology agnostic too. So we do Shopify development, and we do various other development support services for different technologies. But they're essentially two areas of the business where we are at heart a software business, creating our own software, and supporting that really is that professional services arm. So in terms of the brands we work with, pretty heavy in retail, although we do have about 100 brands spread quite well across different categories. We've been going for a while, and we work with lots of brands for different reasons. And I guess that's why today's chat's quite interesting, because we're not just a typical agency, and we're not also just a typical solutions provider either. So yeah, that's us.
Fantastic. So before we get into some specific use cases and examples of things you've actually built out with clients, I wanted to have a general question, an opener, a bit of a warmer up for January and a cold, snowy day, which is how do you go about with clients getting the buy-in to commit to like custom solutions when sometimes I've worked on a lot of projects where the general approach is risk aversion. It's let's not try and add loads of custom complexity. And there might be some tangible use cases where the business wants to do something, but it's going to add a bit of cost and time. And therefore, at a project governance level, it's deprioritized, it moves to backlog. And we know what happens in a lot of backlogs. It's the graveyard where things go to die and they stay there for a very long time. So yeah, how do you and your clients generally approach this and build like a solid business case that says, well, actually, you know, we've got the justification to get this work prioritized?
Yeah. So, I mean, firstly, it depends on the type of project, obviously. Depends on, and I kind of categorize projects in my head into buckets of type. So whether they are functionality pieces within the admin, so the actual portal that the admin user is using to trade and market and merchandise, whether there's functionality within there, that's sort of one thing in my head. Storefront capability, so customer interaction pieces, and then everything else. I kind of have these three buckets in my head. And I think the way that a business can get sign off on these things depends on the type. So the first type around sort of admin capability, it really comes into cost reductions. So that's what I found to be the most powerful reasoning, bargaining chip when you try and talk to the business about trying to get sign off around building custom things. It's all around cost saving. So look at, and you have to go into the numbers on this. You have to look at what do we pay today for what we have, and that might be a license, that might be whatever the cost model is, but how do we save cost against that today? And then if it's incremental functionality that you want to add in that you don't have today, then you have to look at what cost savings can be made, what the impact is on maybe the team. So we can save half a day a person across the team by implementing this functionality. What's the cost of that in terms of resource cost? What does that enable us to do if we use that cost elsewhere? But it's all, that first bucket for me all comes down to cost saving. That's, I think, the most powerful thing when you're trying to get sign off on custom admin capabilities or functionalities. But obviously it depends on the business, depends on also where the business is in terms of its life cycle, if you know what I mean. So like if a business is really established in terms of its technology stack and is really happy with that and there's no movement in terms of platforms or systems, then it's normally a different conversation to a business that's starting to think about, okay, well, we've got an ERP replacement coming up next year. It's therefore the conversation changes in terms of trying to get sign off on implementing custom things, because then the business always thinks, well, in 12 months time, that will need to be reintegrated or reconfigured with this new thing that we're putting in. So it depends on the life cycle is what I'm trying to say, of where a business is. So yeah, that's for me, that's the first thing. It's around cost saving. If it's admin capability, if it's storefront, like adding new capabilities in the storefront, whether that's customer facing, whether that's maybe it's a store kind of omni-channel capability, or if it's some type of thing that touches the customer, then I think it's actually much easier to get sign off on those type of custom capabilities or custom functionalities, because there's always an element of sort of R&D budget that's in a lot of budget things. So if you're trying to add in like a custom product configurator or a custom site search capability, then a business is always interested in learning from the customer. So that's the angle that you can take normally trying to get sign off on those type of functionalities. If they're custom, we're going to be learning X, Y, and Z, and you define that when you're putting in that request for budget or request for sign off. You say, well, these are the things that we're going to be learning from the customer that we can't learn today, that we can't know about, or we don't know about as a business. These are the things we're going to be able to learn from the customer if we implement this type of functionality.
Ready to grow your business online? With WorldPay e-commerce, you can deliver fast, secure payments your customers love, backed by global reach and real people-powered support. Scale with confidence and enhance your customers' experience with WorldPay e-commerce.
Yeah, I quite like the distinction between the back office, the admin, and the front storefront customer facing piece, because I've had this in a few projects where there's been a need to do some storefront configuration. It doesn't matter which platform. I've done it on BigCommerce, Shopify, you name it. And the reason for doing that is because it improves efficiency and it speeds up some processes, for whether it's around product creation, uploading, or it's promotion management. And that timestamp, you're so right, is if you can save 2 hours a week for one person, you can put a cost saving to that over a year. And then you can then calculate, which to me is the most important metric, is time to value.
Yep.
Because you put a business case that says we can save amount, but how quickly will the cost benefit be realized? Is it in 6 months, 9 months? Because that can offer me, because you might have 3 or 4 bits of custom capability you want to build. Maybe 2 of them have got a time to value of 3 months and they get prioritized first. But yeah, I really like that. I think that makes a lot of sense. So should we get into some tangible examples now?
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
So the first one, you really piqued my interest pre-Christmas when you said this, because I hadn't even thought about it. I think a lot of people won't even have thought about it. Is Shopify is well known for having Shop Pay. One of the key decisions for some merchants is I want to have access to Shop Pay as a wallet and to the Shop Pay customers who that is their default payment method. And there is a conversion benefit in checkouts of having that as a payment method over like standardized card payments. Now, you have looked at embedding into Remarkable Commerce's own solution, the Shopify Pay component, so that it can be used on non-Shopify storefronts. So do you want to just give people the lowdown?
Yeah.
What this is, why do retailers need it? What's the implementation? What's the solution?
Yeah. So, I mean, at its heart, Shopify is a payments company, right? Like that's where they make their money on checkout. Their business is focused. That's why they're a GMV model. That's why everything makes sense when you understand and you frame them as a payments company. They introduced the components thing, the concept of that, about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, I think. I think you guys did a episode on it. I think it was about 18 months ago. And the concept of components essentially is where you can take elements of the proposition and only use those things. So the pay component is basically a checkout flow where you add that into your existing platform, whether that be Magento, Remarkable, Salesforce, whatever your platform is. On your basket, where you have PayPal and Google Pay and Apple Pay, you can also have Shop Pay as a button. So that's what it is. The reason that I think a retailer would want this is sort of twofold. So there's a customer benefit, and then there's benefit to the merchant, to the retailer. So the customer benefits in my head are things like, well, as you said then, like the conversion rate improvement opportunity. Obviously, Shopify throw around the whole incremental revenue topic, which is I'm doubtful on. I think it will, when you add Shop Pay into your checkout on other platforms, I think it will probably dilute rather than incrementally grow. However, it's, their checkout flow is proven as a really well converting checkout. there are loads of benefits in terms of the customer. So obviously with ShopPay, if you've used it before, already knows all of your information. So your cards and your addresses and your preferences are already pre-saved in your shop account. So that's obviously a benefit. The customer flow essentially is where on Basket, where you have those buttons, pressing ShopPay triggers a modal. It is very similar flow to the PayPal Express. Yeah, essentially. So you have that modal where you log in, if you're not already logged in on your browser, and then you select your options within that modal, and then it kicks you back into your thank you page. So you don't hit the Shopify thank you. You hit your own thank you, and then you basically do a webhook into Shopify to trigger to kind of connect the order IDs. But it's a very kind of clean flow. I think for customers who are familiar with ShopPay, then it's a no-brainer to use it. You obviously get up when you have the ShopPay app. I don't know if you use it, James, but the ShopPay app is powerful. You have notifications, like the app inline app notifications are really good. It obviously collects all of the kind of updates from couriers and various things on the order within the app. So the ShopPay app is really good. You can also shop within the ShopPay app. So that's the other reason that a lot of merchants are looking at it, is because you can actually list your product within the ShopPay app itself. So there's that benefit. And then, having all of your orders in one place. So there's lots of customer benefits. And then there's obviously retailer benefits as well. So the conversion rate thing, whether that's true or not, I think a retailer might see a conversion rate uplift if they don't have many checkout options already listed. We have a few clients who have like 6, 7, 8 kind of checkout flows from their basket, and then putting one in is a bit of a I don't know, maybe a sort of paralysis of choice. I don't know, but there's conversion rate is an option. I think the other reason that retailers might look at it is because they might not want to re-platform to Shopify because they don't have budget, or they don't have that risk appetite, or they don't have capacity, or whatever the reasons are. They don't want to re-platform. But this gives them a way to sort of test the water a little bit, explore working with Shopify without making any huge investments or risks. Well, actually, there is a big investment, but without making any huge risks to the business. You're just diversifying your checkout options. So although it's not that popular yet, adding ShopPay as a component into a non-Shopify storefront, it still has a lot of benefit, like to the customer and to the retailer. However, there are a lot of, when we've been implementing this, there are a lot of sort of watch outs that I'd say, and a lot of things to consider, and also quite a lot of prerequisites as well that you would need to consider. So, I can talk about those if you want, but
yeah, let's come on to those. I'm definitely intrigued by this because I'm glad you were flagging this now about there are gotchas, prerequisites. There always are. You never change checkouts without testing and validating properly. Yeah. Because you're right. You can introduce something and think it's a great idea, and then it can adversely impact conversion rates. So these things need to be properly tested. But where I can see the benefit is, I don't see this as a benefit for returning customers, because returning customers already bought into a brand. I definitely can see the value it could add to a new customer who is got that ability to find any objection to committing to your first purchase. If they're a registered ShopPay customer and they see that, they know that within the ShopPay, the reliability, the trust angle, the protection side, I can see that having a potential conversion uplift on new customer acquisition. I don't have any validation for that, but I can definitely see why that would be an interesting test. So that in mind, let's talk about it, because implementing stuff always sounds really like great and straightforward, but we all know there's always challenges. So what are those like prerequisites, call outs?
So there are a few. So firstly, components as an approach, as a model, is really only applicable to mid-market brands. So if you're doing under probably about 200 mil a year, if you're doing under that, then you put, this might not be right for you. So really it's for retailers doing above that threshold. This is where this comes into play. Shopify, from the sort of conversations we've had with them, they're relatively strict in terms of only making this applicable or work for decent sized brands. When I say decent size, I mean that sort of 200 plus million turnover.
Yeah.
And then I think the reason for that is because there's an element of work on their side that needs to be done to sort of create this as a capability, as a functionality. And also there's probably a lot of internal stuff that goes on in Shopify that they have to validate all this type of stuff. So yeah, that's the first one. It's size of retailer and business size. Now, there is an element of, if you're in a business that has multiple brands, if you're in a group model that has multiple brands, and the total, combined goes beyond that, then you're probably okay. Even if some of the smaller brands are beneath that amount, then it could become a conversation. But there is certainly a limit, a threshold, to that. That's the first thing. The second thing tied to that is around your Shopify account. So as with, PayPal, etc., you do need a Shopify account, which means you do need to pay a license fee for that. Because of the size of these merchants, you therefore would go beyond Plus, go into enterprise level license fees. So it's paying that on a monthly, obviously that's fixed fee, those license fees for those accounts. So you've got that as a minimum cost. Even if no customer uses it, you still have that several thousand a month going out on those license fees. Then you have obviously the transaction fee on top, which from what we understand is actually quite reasonable and in line with most PSPs from a percentage point of view. But yeah, there is that kind of cost element that you need to watch out for. You do need to do your calculations on whether this makes sense and whether you think that, even if, to your point around new customer, even if you feel that, let's say 10% of new customers are going to be using this, you need to make sure that your margins are good enough on that 10% of orders, of new customer orders, to cover your costs, that license fee, obviously the actual transaction fees as well, plus the implementation. If you CapEx that, obviously you'll need to pay that off, kind of thing. So there's costs, basically, is what this is my first big point that need to be thought of, you need to watch out for. And then when it comes to actually implementing, there are quite a lot of things to think about. So it depends on your current platform and how composable that is, because some platforms, without naming names, I'm not into that, but there are some platforms that are a lot more rigid in checkout than others. There might be composable platforms. There might be relatively flexible on on their marketing slide. But when you actually look at the checkout itself, that's the area, funnily enough, where most platforms are quite rigid. And so you need to look at how actually composable your basket and your checkout flow is. Can you put an order through an API into that platform and then land them on the checkout, on the thank you page, for example? If you've got PayPal Express implemented, then you're probably okay to do something custom. But it's, in terms of implementation, you need to look at really how flexible and composable your current stack is before you start implementing this. One of the big lookouts that we've been sort of looking at is the actual ID correlations. So when you have stable IDs for payment requests and orders, you need to design your APIs to be able to tolerate retries, and you have a really strong webhook solution on your side that allows for that connection between a Shopify ID and your platform order IDs. You need a really robust kind of retry solution and error capturing. So if the customer doesn't go through that Shop Pay solution, where do they land? Because you need to be able to capture the data that they've already selected in that Shop Pay flow back into your existing checkout if they don't complete, because they may want to then abort and then choose a different payment option, for example. Yeah.
On that cost front, I'm a bit blown away that Shopify would charge the license fee, because fundamentally their margin, you're right, they make massive amounts of money out of the payment markups.
Yep.
And they are a payment wallet just like PayPal. You're not using their entire checkout. You're not using their platform capabilities. I'm really blown away that they would charge a license fee for that. It should just be a payment method with payment fees, and they should make their money out of that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think, I think the argument problem would probably be that you have to have an account. You have to have your product and catalog in that account. You have to, obviously within that account, you're still syncing your customers because they're capturing customer data. So your customers area in your Shopify account will still be populated. So in their mind, and obviously you have your the app, shop app, which obviously has your product in it. You have a sort of not fake, but a sort of dummy storefront within the shop app, similar to like an Amazon storefront you have if you're an Amazon retailer. So there's all of that sort of to think about, and I imagine that's their sort of reasoning for having that license fee. But you're right, though, it is a bit perplexing that to get off the ground, you do have to pay, plus or enterprise grade license fees. That's from day one as well, by the way. That's from setting up the account. Might take you 3 or 4 months to get this off the ground, and it's like, well,
yes.
Yeah,
that seemed. I do get the logic of your open up the product thing, but it seems bizarre that there isn't just a simple component solution to use it as a payment wallet, rather than everything else. Because if I were a retailer, my MVP approach would be right. I want to use it as a payment method because there are X millions of people sign up as Shop Pay customers with all their payment details stored in there for quick payment. Get PayPal Express as Shop Pay Express. Let me test that. I'm not so worried about all my products in Shop app. I want to test and validate there's a business case, because that's a big leap of faith to have to go, right. I mean, if you're a 200 million revenue business, I know there's enterprise license fees are different to the standard plus ones, but that's a big chunk of money to bet on that. Yeah.
It's you got to have a pretty chunky budget to be able to look at this as a model, but
yeah.
But then if you compare that with the business going into a replatform with Shopify, especially of that scale, like if you're a business of that size, then when you do a bit of a comparison, this is a cheaper solution, a cheaper way of the world, but it's certainly not cheap for sure. Yeah.
Interesting. No, that's really interesting, because I hadn't thought about the license fee implication. I was thinking about the payments rate. So really interesting. I'm sure that's probably piqued the interest of quite a few people listening. And anyone who is listening to this, who wants to probe a bit further and get a bit more kind of insight into the technical path, Brad's contact details on the landing page. And he's also on LinkedIn and always super responsive. Let's move on to a different custom area. This is another one that interests me when you talk me through it, about embedded insurance. So I'm used to some retailers, like furniture is a great one, where they will use upsells after the order's completed to try and sell things like insurances, warranties, you name it. But this is bringing it further, more advanced into the customer journey at the point of selection of product. So do you want to talk us through what embedded insurance is, how it works, and how it's different to having these separate insurance policies?
Yeah. What it is when you're purchasing product, you purchase the insurance at the same time, covering the product or the item or the service that you're buying. So, in my head, like the most common places is things like flights or train tickets. If you think of those, like, or hotel bookings, or it's those service elements really that it's most commonly known as, where you, within that journey, as you say, within the journey is dependent, we'll come on to that, but some point within the journey before you actually pay, you have the option to add on an insurance to that product or that service. That's what embedded means. And it's embedded because it's part of the journey, but it also means it's because it's part of the same payment, essentially. So the customer pays for both the product, service, whatever, and the insurance at the same time. And then after the fact, it's then split out however it needs to be. But that's what it is. Basically, it's how it kind of combines buying those two things at the same time. Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm doing devil's advocate just because that's what I do in life, being a contrarian. And I've had conversations where people have looked about wanting to do like warranty upsells, a classic one, on the product page, and then they backed out of it because the concern is, well, actually, we're changing the user journey. We could actually reduce conversion, and people, it's more complex than the PDP needs to be. So I'd love you to talk through how this is being used, what sort of performance impacts have you seen?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not, in my view, it's not really a massive change to the customer journey, depending on how you implement it, of course. Like, it's not a massive change in terms of you're not redesigning a page. You're not, PDPs are relatively standard, in my opinion. And when you look at, 100 e-commerces, when you look at their product pages, adding in embedded insurance into a handful of them isn't going to negatively impact your conversion rate at all. So we've implemented it a few times, and what we've done it a few different ways. So basically the change you're doing is asking the customer if they want to add insurance or not. That can be in line on the PDP, beneath the primary call to action, or it could be within a modal in a pop-up on that PDP. So when you select add to bag, you selected your size and color variants, add to bag, you then have a modal that appears that says that item has been now added to bag. Would you now like to add insurance against that for X amount a month or X amount a year or whatever it is? But you do it after the fact. So you're not interrupting that initial decision whether I want to add to bag or not. So your add to bag stays the same. In terms of your add to bag rate, that stays the same. Obviously, you need to monitor your basket entry to make sure that you're not dropping people out or reducing that number. But yeah, there's not a massive change really. The other alternative is you do it within the basket. So on the basket template, you then have either an element or a modal perhaps that is that more traditional upsell thing. So instead of saying add this product in on the basket, you could say add this insurance in if you wish. That could be the actual UX and design of that could be as simple as a checkbox that you just literally tick in rather than being a button or a selection perhaps. But adding it up the journey obviously does have more risk to impacting conversion rate, as you say. But from my experience and from what we've seen across the few implementations of it, it's actually had the opposite effect. It actually has improved conversion rate. It's actually improved engagement in checkout. So when we look at sort of exit rates and engagement rates on certain fields within the checkout flow, they're actually all positive, not negative. And I think it's because, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, can you give us an example of a site where it's, because I think people love to see examples and go and check out. So what website's got this activity on?
So you look at SGS Engineering. I think it's sgs-engineering.com. Could it K? Don't know.
I've got it up, .com.
You got it up, cool. If you look at, we've implemented it on with price thresholds. So if you look at a product over £100, I think, and then add to bag, you will then see a modal that appears and says, that's on the product page, modal that appears and says you can add annual insurance for £15 or whatever it is. That basically adds it in as a line item into the basket, into the checkout. So you're buying essentially an additional item. So they in particular saw an uplift in revenue through implementing this. So obviously you can look at the insurance lines that have been ordered and you can see that, but the overall impact on revenue since implementing has been about 3 or 4% on revenue as an overall. If you're doing pretty big numbers, 3 or 4% is quite a lot of money. So that's a positive. There's loads of other positives though. So like basket abandonment reduced, because essentially the customer is being given an extra option as a reason to buy, if that makes sense. Because normally if you get to checkout and you think, well, if I'm buying a drill for £400 and it breaks in 6 months' time, or if it gets stolen in 10 months' time, what happens? And you start to when you get to checkout, you then start to second guess that purchase decision. Having that as a checkout inside the checkout as a confidence booster actually then reduces the abandonment of checkout. So abandonment reduces, revenue increases, but I think it helps the broader confidence level of the customer, because they're not thinking just on a single product. Then they start to think about, okay, well, if I can add insurance into this order, not just on this item, then perhaps I should add in a few more batteries, or maybe I should go for that extra saw or whatever product I'm looking at on SGS. So it adds that sort of broad category sort of effect rather than being a single product effect. When we looked at SGS and we looked at the number of orders using or applying embedded insurance, a lot of them were multi-item orders, not just single hero product orders, proving essentially that this is a repeatable purchase decision. It's not just a sort of niche one-off. Okay, I'm buying a £800 chest of drawers, I'm going to put insurance on it. This is a genuine, repeatable behavior that we've sort of been able to imply. So, yeah. And I think the other interesting part of it is that, like, customers are becoming a little bit more familiar with this as a concept, like being able to protect their order or protect their product or service, gives people a little bit more peace of mind. And it's becoming just a little bit more, even if the implementation is not as embedded as what I've described, I think people are becoming more familiar with the idea of buying it and just protecting themselves, just because consumers are a little bit more conscious and a little bit more, cost conscious, essentially, with everything going on in the world over the past few years. I think people have become a little bit more careful about purchasing. So this plays into that.
In terms of technically how it works, then, because obviously it's dependent on the product type and the selling price. Where are the calculators? Is it just a flat table lookup, or is there funky calculations going on to give the customer the accurate value of what the annual fee is per item?
It's dynamic. Yeah. So, with SGS particularly, it's dynamic. So on every product, we essentially call, I think they use Quotel is their embedded insurance provider. It used to be called Embry. It's now called Quotel. And we do a dynamic on-the-fly lookup against their API for that product price. So we'll say if you're buying a £100 drill, we'll then call our API and say, give us back the embedded insurance price and premium price for this particular product. So that's a dynamic sort of piece of work that happens behind the scenes. And then when you add to basket, we save that as an item price, and that's you're buying an item essentially, even though it's not physical. And then the way that works, I'll go back to that. There's another way that we calculate prices, which is tiered. So we are helping implement a tiered approach for a different brand where, because they didn't want that individual calculation, instead they wanted to do tiered thresholds. So we basically do a rounding calculation. So if you're buying a £100 product, that will be tier 1, for example, which is and we round that within a certain variance. We round that up to £10, for example, for an annual premium. The reason that this particular retailer did that is because when it gets a bit technical, but for their ERP, when you put an order into their ERP, you have to list all the sort of elements of that order. So say you're buying a drill for £100. That can obviously reconcile because the ERP has a drill at £100 listed in its ERP. But it also, if the order is £110, then the ERP goes, well, hang on a minute, you've just bought something for £100, but we've received 110. How does that calculate? And within their ERP, they didn't want to basically create thousands of SKUs for individual priced items that a customer would be, insurance items that a customer would be buying. So the workaround for it was to create only a shorter list of SKUs within their ERP. And we did that through this tiered solution, essentially. So instead of creating 100,000 SKUs, all individually priced between £1 and £50, instead they created only 100 SKUs, which is much easier to do than, it's not that many, but you tier the price. So it's, 10, 12, £15, etc. So that was the reason that they did it, and allow them to be able to basically reconcile an order with, and also we have then a matrix lookup that says if you're buying this £10 insurance premium, then that correlates to this SKU in the ERP. So then when we send the order back to the ERP, we send the SKU of both the product and the correct correlated insurance SKU in their ERP, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I'm working on a project at the moment which has like warranty, and it's using similar things. So basically a line item attribute that links the value to the original SKU, and that gets passed to ERP so the ERP knows, and therefore it knows not only what the value, but the length of the warranty at purchase, because warranty lengths change over time. So it's really interesting hearing how, and that's why I was interested in the technical approach. But let's move on, because we've got one final but really important custom approach that we wanted to talk through today. And it ties in nicely with Paul and I when we did our predictions for 2026, where we basically see if we're talking bollocks by looking back at the equity. The one that I pulled out was tactical middleware, which aligns with what you're saying. So I'm seeing this more, and I'm having more and more discussions and advising people about this. Is there are times when people don't need to pay for like a big third-party middleware like a Celigo or whatever. Pick your third party, because the license fees that come with it, they need it for a very specific use case or subset of use cases, and actually building a tactical solution on something lighter can be faster to market and cheaper, less complex to maintain.
Yeah.
And we're seeing people using more tools like Airtable for things like this as well. So do you want to talk us through building custom middleware solutions? What's the use case for it? What's the tech that you're using? And give us a couple of examples where doing this has added value to a client.
Yeah, cool. So there's I think just starting with the reasons, I guess, like you said, lightweight is the route because you're saving on, large ongoing costs. If you've got a specific use case, why buy a product that offers 100 things when you're only going to be using one thing? Often when you look at integrations between systems, the main reason you're trying to connect systems is to save time or cost, effort, or improve data accuracy or improve data syncing, improve data flows. So they're the reasons you're trying to connect systems together. Now, the reason you would probably build something custom instead of using an off-the-shelf iPaaS, for example, is because although you can achieve 80% with those iPaaS solutions, that last 10 or 20% is actually where the most value comes. Because you're basically that complex orchestration where you've got lots of different steps, lots of different systems, non-standardized protocols or bespoke pieces or APIs. That's where value is. So although you can achieve the great deal, that 80% within most off-the-shelf, middleware connection systems, that last 20% is where businesses actually want to innovate and spend time. And therefore building something lightweight that does that last 20% is actually, the most valuable piece in terms of a retailer. So there's a few examples that we've recently been doing that our merchants have really benefited from. The first one is integrating with John Lewis. So they have a system called The Edge. Don't know if you've worked with it before, James?
Not directly, no.
Yeah. It's like a really old school EDI solution, essentially. And you connect your inventory and your products and your orders. It's a very manual system. It's a portal that John Lewis have been using for many, many years. And because of the size of them, because of the scale of them, it's pretty rigid in terms of how it works. So we built a two-way sync for a Shopify brand. And this connects their Shopify API with their ERP, with the Edge, with John Lewis's Edge system. So it's a sort of three-way piece of solution. We did this for a jewelry brand, and there's a few other brands that we've been playing around with it for as well. What it does essentially is takes your product and inventory data out of your ERP. So Aurelia, they use Unleashed as their ERP, and which is their master of basically product and inventory data. It takes that, takes a kind of copy essentially into our solution, and then we sync it up into the Edge so that the Edge has updated product data and inventory data. Then what we do is we connect to the Edge, push that data in, pull back a webhook that basically, through the EDI that basically talks about retrieving it. Then what we do is we call the Edge to retrieve orders. So when a customer buys Aurelia jewelry on the John Lewis site, that order then goes into the Edge. We pull it from there and sync it back into Shopify's API because there's already a flow from Shopify into Unleashed, essentially. So what Aurelia are wanting to do is firstly have a one place where all of their orders are, which they wanted to be Shopify. So we pulled those Edge orders into Shopify. And they also wanted to manage that automatically. So without any sort of manual intervention. What they were doing in the past was like manually mapping order IDs from the Edge into Shopify and really sort of manual hacks to get this to work. And then, that already connects into Unleashed. So that's the first thing we've done. Basically, it's that integration, pretty deep integration with the Edge, John Lewis's Edge system with Shopify and Unleashed.
Every time you say the Edge, I'm visualizing the Edge from U2. It's like AI.
Yeah.
AI solution in the cloud. Which is giving me some weird images. Anyway, sorry, I did.
It's definitely the absolute opposite of that. This is from like the 70s. Like EDIs is such an old. EDIs was like before FTP. Like this is old school. Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I can't help it. That's the way my brain works.
There was another. Sorry to interrupt you, but there was another example you gave me about. I think it was Pragno. You said connecting to Zonos. Zonos. Yeah. I never know whether you say Zonos or Zonos.
I don't know either.
That's quite interesting one.
Yeah. So Pragnell, one of our jewelry brands, they wanted to sell internationally and they wanted to price convert their UK site. They didn't want to launch a different domain. They didn't want to invest in, not just from a cost perspective, but just the effort and the sort of the project size of going with like a global E or an ESW or whatever. So they wanted to do it as simply as possible, which I think a lot of brands do, but they don't quite know maybe how to do it. So they wanted to have on their site the ability for a customer, if they land on the Pragnell site from a different country, a modal to say, hey, we noticed that you're in France. Would you like to see euros, for example? So this isn't copy translation. This is just price currency conversion. So then the customer says yes, and then all of the prices across the site are then converted. Now they wanted to do this instead of using a sort of price book or a manually managed way of doing it. They wanted to do it automatically. They also wanted to use a partner that automatically calculates the shipping and the taxes and the other fees that go into, their shipping internationally. Especially when you're selling product like Pragnell do, which is relatively expensive pieces of jewelry and watches. And so, they wanted a customer experience that they could manage. They didn't want the a common approach to selling internationally, either via markets or via the other sort of common ways, which is a little bit more rigid in how it looks and how it works. They wanted to find a solution that was a little bit more loose. So we found an integration with a system called Zonos. We built an integration, with a system called Zonos, which basically we call them with product prices, and they give us back, and we have to give them the product SKU and the EAN and various other fields. They then calculate the shipping costs and all the other fees that go into it. We then store that along with the currency conversion for each currency that they sell in. We store that on our side and then show that to the customer. So that was a much lighter weight solution because we're basically just storing some extra prices and allowing the customer to switch currency and then inputting those extra price fields into the checkout flow, which was really simple. So that as an integration was like a few weeks compared to obviously integrating or launching a new ESW or whatever, which can take a lot longer than a week or two. So yeah, they benefited massively from that, and they can now sell, different currencies to international customers, which is really, really powerful for them.
Yeah, great. I mean, these are two really good examples of where I was coming at in the pod I did with Paul, which is the people want to avoid having all these extra customizations. Yeah. I do get that because you have to maintain them, but you also have budgets to manage, and you don't want to be paying for a tool that you're only leveraging 10-15% of. There are so many off-the-shelf middlewares, patchworks, high keychains that are brilliant. But in order to get the value from the license, you've got to use them properly and use the flows, the connectors extensively. If you have a small thing to do, it often pays to do it in a more custom route. So really good to get those. And I mean, I could keep asking you questions about loads of different things, but I'm also aware that you have a job to do in the light of it. So,
well, there's one more I want to tell you about, which is quite exciting.
Okay, yeah, please go for it.
We are working with an agency called Media Vision. They're an SEO firm, and they have a system called Metis, which is a brand keyword tracking tool, and it looks at demand, like search demand, not just across Google but other networks, and it then tracks the popularity and the trends of keywords. Essentially, we're building with them a Shopify connection that allows for dynamic collection creation, which is super cool. So the way it works is when a brand connects Metis with their Shopify account, which is the app that we're building, Metis recognizes brand or keyword volume increases. Let's say they see puffer jackets massively increase as a search volume. This app will look at the collections already created on a Shopify merchant account. If they don't have puffer jackets and there's product already there, it will then dynamically create collections ready for the merchant to check them and approve them. So this is dynamic collection creation based on search demand and intelligence that we're building in. So there's pieces of AI we're building in terms of obviously product lookups and category collection lookups. We're also doing based on that trend data. So is it just like a one-off, one-day increase in search demand? Obviously, we don't want to be creating hundreds of collections just for that reason. So there's a lot of intelligence going into it around those triggers. But this is an exciting part of the sort of merchandising world that I don't think has really been tackled properly, because it's super manual for a merchandiser to have to go in, create a new collection, put products into it, manually manage it. They don't want to do that. They want to know that their categories are coming up on search engines for high demand or high search demands. So yeah, dynamically doing it is cool. And we're doing it with this partner, Metis, which is super interesting. So yeah, we're close to getting that live, and that's pretty exciting.
I really love that example, because this is what I've said many times here. One of the things I really admire about Remarkable is that you're not just focused on your own tech and solution build around that. You've seen where the market's evolved to. You are using your engineering skills to help people in other platform ecosystems to improve their capabilities. And I think that's really, really smart. And it's really interesting because that automatic collection bit is great. I know a few brands actually who would like at some point, I imagine, to hear a bit more about it. Cool. And it's where in the long term, Shopify sees Sidekick evolving to, but it's not there. No. It's not there. It doesn't have that. And it will take quite a while for anything of that level to get built into it. So I love seeing these tactical additions. So thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah. Pleasure, James. Really appreciate it. Good to catch up.
Yeah, it always is. And look, for anyone listening, it's well worth connecting and keeping an eye on what Brad and the team are doing at Remarkable. Always interesting things coming out of the business. And if you do want to speak to him about any of the things we discussed, then get in contact via LinkedIn or via the link on our landing page. And thanks to listeners as always. You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast hosted by experienced consultants James Gurd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-commerce strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.